If you've ever loved a dog, then you know they leave paw prints on your heart that last forever. When they're gone, the grief can feel overwhelming, but sometimes sharing those stories of love and loss can help us heal. Welcome to A Dog's Devotion. I'm your host, Carla Basacki. Today's episode is a deeply personal one. My guest is author and historian Grant Hayter-Menzies. And today, we're talking about a story that's much closer to his heart, his beloved rescue dog, Freddie. In his moving memoir, Freddie, the Rescue Dog Who Rescued Me, Grant shares an honest and powerful journey of unconditional love, second chances, resilience, and the heartbreaking reality of saying goodbye. It's a story that reminds us that our dogs don't just change our lives, they often save them in ways we never expected. If you're grieving the loss of a loved pet, or simply cherish the incredible bond you share with your dog, I hope today's conversation brings you comfort, hope, and the reassurance that you're not alone. Hi, Grant. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Where are you, by the way? Are you in Calgary, south of Calgary?
So I'm in Medicine Hat, Alberta, so about 2-hour drive south of Calgary.
Right. You know, I lived in Calgary for a while, and I used to go to Lethbridge quite a bit because my granny lived in Lethbridge. So that was, used to drive through Medicine Hat.
Yeah, we thought about moving to Lethbridge, but when we visited Medicine Hat, we fell in love with it. So we were very happy to do that.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah.
You've written, I want to talk to you about your books because you're a writer. You look very studious. You look like an author, by the way.
It's all the books in my study, I guess.
Yeah, no. How many books have you written in total? 13?
I've got 2 being considered now by publishers, and I'm working on actually 3, and I'm working on number 17 now.
Wow.
So hopefully we'll hear something positive from said publishers. Very different world now. For some reason, things are very different now for publishing, but
of course they are. It's all changed.
Everything's different, but we live in hope. So
good. Well, my fingers are crossed for you.
Thank you.
You've written a lot of different books. You've written books about animals. Emily Carr's pet monkey, I believe, is one book that you've written. You've written about dogs that have helped us through history in various ways. But the one that really touched my heart that I want to talk to you about because it resonated with me so much was your Freddie, the rescue dog that rescued me. And I'm a huge advocate for rescuing senior dogs. All my dogs have been rescues. They've all been seniors. They are the most loyal. They are the most loving. They are, for me, so grateful knowing that you have saved them. And that is just, there's nothing like it in the world. So,
No.
And I'm sure you feel the same. I'm sure you experienced that with your Freddie. I lost my Max. I wanted to honor him. So I started this podcast in his honor to keep his legacy alive because he meant that much to me. Is that why you wrote the book, Freddie, the Rescue Dog Who Rescued Me?
I actually started writing about animals because of Freddie. I was a biographer of extraordinary but unsung women, as my press packet often said in those days when I was out and about doing book launches. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed celebrating women's lives that had been overlooked. But when we adopted Freddie in September 2010, and I saw how this traumatized, unsocialized, terrified little creature took a chance on humans again, despite what they'd done to him. Freddie came out of a puppy mill hoarding situation. And his bravery, his courage, his loyalty, his willingness to love us, because we could have been as cruel to him as other people had been. I thought I really want to write about animals who have made a difference in history. And of course, that led me to animals conscripted into human wars, which of course no animal ever caused and shouldn't have to fight, but they have. And there are many, many inspiring, heartbreaking, but inspiring, beautiful stories of animals in war settings and what they did to help people. And so he led me into writing about Rags, the mascot and dispatch dog for the American 1st Division World War I to writing about Wu, Emily Carr's monkey companion, who I insist some academics disagreed with me, but I insist Wu had a lot to do with inspiring Emily Carr as both writer and artist, and writing about the Dorothy Brooke who saved thousands of former war horses that had been left behind to lives of hard labor in Egypt after the end of World War I. All because of Freddie. And of course, Muggins, the Canadian fundraising dog from Victoria. And of course, Freddie was there during all the writing of Muggins. That was Freddie's last year. And he went with me on various walkabouts as I retraced Muggins' steps from various parts of Victoria to other parts during his fundraising activities, and found places where Muggins had been photographed 100 years before. And Freddie helped me unbox my author's copies of Muggins about a week before he died. What he did for us in his life, he died when he was about 13. So we had him about 10 years in our lives. He had seen me through an unexpected divorce, through the turmoil that followed. He fell madly in love with my new partner, Rudy, whom he simply worshipped. Freddie never worshipped me. I was the chief cook and bottle washer. But it was a great pleasure to do anything for him and to make, whatever made him happy. He was a source of great joy. And then seeing me through till the very end, he lived with a vascular cancer called hemangiosarcoma, which was diagnosed in summer of 2020. Now, most dogs that are diagnosed with this, it's by the time they find it, it's too late. And we were given a matter of weeks. And if we opted for surgery, it was on his spleen, that his age might be against him. He was then about 12 and he had a heart murmur. So we decided to go ahead with it because he was so full of joy. I've been through this situation many times where an animal companion really doesn't want to stay. They want to let go. And so you let them go. But he did not. He wanted to live. So we got him through the surgery, which he aced like a champ. A week later, when we took him over for a checkup, he tried to chase squirrels. He was stitches in his belly. And then that was followed by some of the most difficult chemotherapy that there is. And so he aced that, 3 months of that. And a year later, he was still with us and still doing fine. There was no recurrence, but he then was diagnosed with lymphoma. And so we had a discussion and we sat with him and we talked to our vet. And again, it felt like he wanted to stay. He wanted to stay as long as he could. He was happy with us. He was still playing. And so we started him on that chemotherapy, which is considerably less difficult than the one he went through for hemangiosarcoma. And he was actually making progress. Ultimately, it was his heart condition that got him. It's like these various ailments were running a race, and it was his heart that got there first. And he
sounds like a little fighter, Grant.
He was. Well, he'd had to be. And so after he passed away, Rudy and I went through a terrible several months of grief. That really anybody that tells you that there's no such thing as a broken heart has a broken one. It was bad. But to help me with some of this processing of this grief, I began reading through my diaries, and I'd kept a medical health diary for Freddie just to keep track of everything for that year. And reading through all this, I thought, his story might be of use for other people going through this. Yes, I've acknowledged him in several of my books. I've dedicated some of my books to him. People know about Freddie. Even the current Queen Camilla knew about Freddie. He was pictured with me on the back of my on the dust jacket of my biography of Dorothy Brooke. who rescued the lost war horses of Cairo, and the Queen is the president of Brooke, the working equine charity that Mrs. Brooke founded almost 100 years.
Interesting.
And so I'd given her a copy of my Mrs. Brooke biography, and Camilla read from it at a carol service at Guards Chapel in London in December 2018. So she knew about Freddie. He's mentioned in the text, and also he's pictured with me on the dust jacket. And so the fact that but I thought, there must be some way that Freddie's story can help other people. And what we did to bring him out of his shell as a traumatized rescue dog, and also what he taught us about courage. And
I have so many questions for you because I know the pain that you went through. So did you write this book to help you heal as well as to help other people heal? Because dog grief is real. I know I couldn't get out of bed for weeks. I was a mess.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody really heals from that kind of grief. I haven't. Rudy has. There are days when it strikes me, and I have to revisit all that. But I wrote it hoping that it would be of help for others, that maybe they might see their grief mirrored in what we went through, but also the joy of helping a little traumatized animal, a little dog. He was very little dog, come out of his shell and trust. And the fact that I tell the story in the book of how I held a great deal of anger after we first adopted Freddie against the people who had made him the way he was. I'm like my mother that way. My mother said, if give me 5 minutes with the people that did this to him. And I tend to have inherited that. And I was very angry. And he read this in a way that made him stay away from me. And it was very upsetting because I had chosen him. I did everything for him, and he didn't want to be near me. And so I called an animal therapist in to meet with us. And she said, I'm not blaming anybody here, but this stuff you're carrying around, that's not where he's at. He's not dwelling on all of that before he came here. He's picking up on your anger and just the pity for him. She said, you can just drop it. Just drop it.
So
and she said, you gotta reassess.
It's really interesting because I read how dogs pick up on our feelings, right? Dogs live in the present. We don't. I mean, we harbor anger like you did and resentment. And how could somebody do this to a dog? But the dog doesn't know any better, He
didn't know. And so she said, one way to rebuild trust, she said, I've got some very basic things you can do. One of them was to sit on the floor in the kitchen and feed him his dinner by hand for as long as it takes before so that he comes near you and he knows it's okay. So I did that for about 3-4 weeks. And then my then partner, Les, had to go away for 3 days, I think. So Freddie and I were left alone in the house. And I just decided, you know what? I'm not going to hover over him. I'm not going to force him to do anything he doesn't want to. If he wants to come to me, he'll come to me. But I won't stop looking after him and taking him out and having a good time. And so I was sitting upstairs on the floor, reshelving some books, and I heard his picking up his nails coming up the steps and then down the hallway. And he came down to where I was sitting and looked at me and put his head on my knee. And I realized then that he had decided I could be trusted. And after that, we were, thick as thieves. We were very close. He came to me whenever he was afraid. Anytime anything scared him, he ran to me. So, it was a big change. And of course, he ended up with me when my marriage fell apart. So
I'm sure he helped you through that too.
They do. They really do. It's a lot. I don't like humans putting their stuff on animals. Like say, deal with your stuff. Don't weigh an animal down with it. But he accepted. It's like he wanted to comfort me. I had a cat, Liebchen, who was very much the same way. Actually, looked a lot like Freddie, who came to me when I was upset. And my thing is to try to hide that from a pet and not worry them. But Liebchen would come to me, and Freddie would do the same thing. And so, and Nico, our rescue now, does the same thing. Have to really be careful. Nico, for example, is very, very sensitive, and he assumes that he's done something wrong. If you're upset with something, he assumes it's him. And of course, as a child, I was that way. When my parents had issues, I thought it was because of me. And so I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. There must be a way that this story can help other people. And I have heard from people who were helped by reading about Freddie.
Do you mind sharing what some of the comments have been from people who have read the book?
Other people who've adopted troubled dogs, mostly, who came out of hoarding situations or puppy mills, excuse me, who read about what we did. And it's interesting how many people trusted their own intuition about what to do, but it was seeing what we did that made them realize that they were on the right track. And I think just taking animals seriously, that's always been my thing. And reading, I see how seriously you took Freddie, how seriously you take the other animals you've written about, and how important that is to do that with my own animal companion.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Does it not make you feel very comfortable knowing, grateful that you've helped other people going through the same ordeal that you did?
It does, and also other animals, because
Uh-huh.
I donated a percentage of royalties from my other books to animal welfare organizations.
You did? Okay.
Freddie appeared in several BCSBCA calendars that were fundraisers. And when he passed away, the BCSBCA sent us flowers because he had been such a good poster pup for their cause. That's, the other thing I wanted to give back as best I could through telling his story. And so, yeah, and just to raise awareness that, they should be taken seriously. Animals share many of the same crazy ups and downs of our lives that we go through. They're not just passive onlookers. And so it has to be made clear to them what's happening to them, like with children, human children. So,
yeah, I agree. Your title is incredibly powerful. In what ways did Freddie save you?
Without going into too many details, my reaction to the sudden end of my marriage was pretty devastating. A lot of other things were happening in my life at the time. It's like life. And it all happened at once. And I actually thought, it's not worth it. It's not worth hanging around for this. Why am I belonging this? Why don't I just, And I realized, no, I have who would look after him? Given what had happened in my life, I thought I can't trust any of the humans around me at the moment. So what will happen to Freddie? No, I have to stick around. And then of course seeing him through his last year. Who would have done that for him?
Saved each other, really.
We did. And one thing I like to point out, and I tried to in the book, is how important it is to have health insurance for your pet, because Freddie's care would likely have bankrupted us. It came to about $50,000. And there are people that say, well, that's so much money to spend. It's like, well, he wanted to live, and I wanted to do whatever I could to help him live and to help him have a happy life while he could. And I'm sorry, money is there to spend when it comes to this kind of thing. And had we not had insurance, we would have been sort of in some difficult straits. But it's really important. It's not necessarily that expensive to pay premiums per month. And it really will come in handy when you need it. We never needed it. For 10 years of his life with us, we never needed it. And then the very last year,
You did need it.
absolutely, it was just a miracle, really. So,
well, he was a fighter, little Freddie.
He was. He wanted to live. And in fact, just before we took him to the hospital, the last time, the emergency hospital, he could barely breathe, but he wanted to play, and he was still wanting to play with his toys. And when we were brought into the ICU to see him the last time, he was in an oxygen cage. They brought him out holding the oxygen to his nose, and they lay him down on the table on a soft blanket, he really wasn't able to stand, but when he saw us, he got up and stood for us when he saw us come in. And when it came time to have an urn made for his ashes, I talked to the artist who made it, and she said, "How do you want him depicted?" It's a little figure of him on the top with gold wings. And I said, "I want him looking up at us, standing." And so that's how he's depicted. That's how I'll always remember him. It still doesn't seem possible that he died that morning. It's still very hard to. That's probably
Get it.
also why because it makes it very real.
I talk a lot about dog loss and dog grief and how it feels after and how we all deal with it and how we deal with it differently. So I'm curious because so many of our listeners of A Dog's Devotion have experienced the loss of a beloved dog. I mean, I get so many messages from people about this, or they're navigating difficult times. How did dogs help you heal in your life? Because you've gone through a lot of pain. You've gone through a lot.
By being loyal, by trusting, by doing a lot of the things humans don't necessarily do.
Is that not the truth or what?
But when you find a human that you can trust, hang on to that.
Yes, that's true too.
But the sense of trust, the sense of loyalty, the belief in you that even when you've been, when you're in a bad mood, and they'll come up to you, and it's like, well, is it really all that bad? Is it really all that important? Is it important enough for you to, wreck your day over it? Humans can do that too for you. I've been blessed to know some humans who pulled me out of dark places, but Freddie and then Nico, they do that without even being asked, and they're only with us such a short time.
I know.
It's why it's important to make the most of it. That's another lesson in making the most of our lives, right? Because we don't know.
I think that from my experience, I mean, Max always knew when I was upset or if I was crying or if I was sick or, breakups. How many breakups did I go through that Max was the most loyal male that I knew that would just sit beside me on my bed as I cried with his paw on my shoulder. I'll ever forget that. I owe him so much gratitude for that. So I think that dogs know when we're hurting or when we're happy. Do you agree with that?
They sense it. It's a
I know.
very powerful sensory ability, almost psychic in a way. I'll find, for example, I would find Freddie looking at me when I was upset. Of course, he was with us during the first part of COVID and the craziness that happened then. And I would find him, I'd be despairing over something or worrying about a relative, very, very dear relative of mine in the U.S. who was living with Alzheimer's, and I couldn't go see him because of COVID lockdown. And I would see Freddie looking at me and with this sort of, we called it chocolate pudding eyes, sort of this lamp bright, glowing look, and just everything would feel better. And just, of course, holding them and the smell of your a lovely dog, the warmth, everything about it is comforting. I hope they get some comfort out of what they do for us. I always think about, as I mentioned before, I don't want this to be a one-way thing. I fear sometimes it is with some people, but I don't like to see a lot of human stuff put on them that they don't understand. They live in the moment. They don't worry about crap that's coming. They don't worry about crap before. They just live now. I was hoping to bring that out in the book as well, because Freddie was very much that way. Just felt like he was really centered after all he'd been through.
I know a hoarding situation, a puppy mill. I mean, it's horrible, and it's all over social media. You can see what's going on and how people are trying to rescue them. It's very sad that these dogs that do survive those situations are so resilient, and if they're given a chance, they can live a long and healthy life and be very loving animals again, which is unbelievable.
The past year, I spent writing a sequel to Freddie about Nico and his rather miraculous life with us since 2022, and how his coming into our lives, two men in their 60s. You think maybe adventures are done, but he just having this rambunctious, happy young pup in our lives moved us to consider leaving BC and moving to Alberta, and mainly so he could have a house and a yard that he could run around into his heart's content. We were living in a tiny little condo. And so we decided that we would, to give him a yard and a house, we would sell. And we did, found a wonderful old house here. And he has all the room he could want to run around in, 2 staircases, a nice big yard. So he's getting used to the snow in the winter. So
I don't know if you can ever get used to the snow, but there's so many great dog stories out there. Yours is one of them. Why do you think stories about dogs continue to resonate across generations?
many of us grew up with them, and many of us have known wonderful dogs. I think of some of the neighbors' dogs that I remember from childhood, and whose the stories of beloved dogs run in my father's family and my mother's family as far back as you can go. I heard about dogs, beloved dogs who had done interesting, goofy things. Some of them had actually rescued members of the family going back 100, 150, 200 years. And my maternal grandmother wrote about a dog that had been on her father's farm in East Texas that had rescued her sister from a pond, and how much he meant to it. And so I grew up with that. Whenever I see families that are bringing up kids from babyhood with dogs, cats, I rejoice, because that's going to be a really well-adjusted kid. I really think it makes all the difference to have animals in your life when you're a child. We had all kinds, but the dogs and the cats stick out.
I can't agree more. I mean, I'm sure you're like me. I can remember the first dog we had. I can remember the second dog we had. I remember my parents rescued a poodle that was in a really bad situation. And obviously it had been beaten by a male, because every time my dad got close to the dog, it would shake and shiver and it would pee. And so we really wanted to keep this poodle, because the 3 of us kids loved her, but she just couldn't be around my dad. So my dad went to the point of getting dressed up in my mother's clothes and putting a wig on and putting perfume on, hoping that the dog would learn to trust him, because we didn't know what else to do. And unfortunately, it didn't work. That dog was so traumatized by men that we had to give it to an elderly woman who really loved her. And so we know that she had a good life. But, dogs have played a role in my entire life, even now.
It is, but luckily, like I said before, there are, I believe, more good people than bad people, and we just need to make sure that ratio is maintained.
Yeah. Finally, where can listeners find Freddie, the rescue dog that rescued me, if they'd like to learn your story? Maybe they're going through some grief and they need some help. It certainly helps to read about somebody else who's going through it.
Yes, of course. They can find the book through Amazon. They can find it through any online bookseller. They can order it through their bookstore. It was published by Heritage House in Victoria. If they just just Google Freddie, the rescue dog who rescued me, and my name, they should be led to some online bookstore.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me. Thank you for sharing your story. Thanks for being so open and vulnerable. And it's hard talking about our dogs. I appreciate you opening up to me and to all of us.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure. And
I look forward to your other books.
yes, well, I want to see that they get published.
Okay. It'll happen. Positive thinking.
Yeah, I'm as positive as I can be. So
okay,
let's hope
so. All right. Thanks so much, Grant.
Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.